We often think of discipline as this cold, very rigid thing. Early mornings, cold showers, and saying no to everything that's fun. We treat it like a punishment we must endure to get a result. But what if I told you that discipline isn't about being a drill sergeant? What if discipline actually is the highest form of self stewardship? And what if it is also an act of self love? Let me explain. Welcome, everybody, to the Ease Your Mind podcast. My name is Christina Adrian. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, teaching everything about the intersections of mental health and biblical wisdom, healing minds, restoring faith, and renewing purpose. I spend a lot of time looking for the why behind our behavior. I often like to understand why we do the things we do rather than just trying to just cope with it and leave it as is. Because once you know why you do what you do, then it's better and easier for you to change it at the root, which I believe will give more and better change rather than having to manage a symptom. I often don't like the idea of just managing things. I do believe that you can rid yourself of things, such as depression and anxiety. Today, we're talking to those who feel like they've hit a wall, those who have a good life, but you feel chaotic inside. Or maybe you feel like your life is in shambles, and it is in shambles. But logically, you would admit that you know what to do to get better, but you just cannot do it. We're going to look at the intersection of psychological systems and biblical wisdom to understand how discipline can actually heal your mental health. Discipline is often the difference between burnout and breakthrough. If you are tired of feeling burnt out, leading to depression, robbing you of the joys of life, this episode is for you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and push the bell notification to know each time a new video drops. So let's talk about Sarah. Sarah is a project manager who feels a constant low-grade hum of anxiety. She checks her phone immediately upon waking and responds to Slack messages until 10 p.m. She feels busy, but not productive. So what Sarah now does, she incorporates an inhibitory controlled training. And what this looks like is Sarah implements a digital Sabbath from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. By doing this, she's creating a hard boundary and her brain stops scanning for threats. The threats in this situation would be the work crises, looking for those in the evening. So the brain has stopped looking for these threats in the evening time because of the boundaries she has put into place. Her cortisol levels drop, her sleep quality improves, and her morning brain is sharper for high-level strategy. When we put certain boundaries when it comes to our times, it's a way of trying to get our brain to stop thinking and worrying about, because our brain is always scanning for certain threats. So if you have the type of job that there's always a crisis, somebody emailing you even after hours, texting you after hours, when you put that hard boundary, it's telling your brain that we will stop looking for and scanning for these threats during this time. And this time, it could be rededicated to something else, something for you, your self-care, or maybe spend time with your family, whatever it might be, so that you are no longer thinking about this. And this is one of the reasons why when it comes to dealing with anxiety, one of the things that's usually encouraged is doing a brain dump. So you dump everything that's in your mind that you're anxious about on paper, especially when you're before going to bed. Because oftentimes when we're anxious about something, the reason why it's keeping us up at night is because we keep thinking and ruminating about it. So when we do a brain dump, we write everything that we're anxious about on a piece of paper so that it comes out of our mind and our mind is no longer trying to think about it. Now, if you have the ability to look at that list and see what you can solve and when you can solve it, that can also be helpful, because sometimes when we look at the list, we might realize that I can't control these things. Some of them are things you can't control, and some of them are like, wait, I don't have to worry about this till Friday. It's Monday. Let me not worry about this. So you reorganize the things that you're worried about to help your brain to see things as less as a threat. Because oftentimes our mind is continuously always scanning to find ways to keep us safe, to keep us comfortable. And oftentimes we need to have these types of systems in place, whether it's putting a boundary or whether it's a brain dump, so that our mind can know that it can go at ease, because it's kind of telling the brain that this has been taken care of. Or let's think about Marcus. Marcus wants to start a side business or a master's program, but feels paralyzed by the size of the goal. He spends his weekends recovering from the week by doom scrolling. Now, I know all of us can probably relate to doom scrolling. I know I've done it sometimes, unfortunately, and it's a total waste of time. And sometimes, or many times when we've done doom scrolling, we then feel worse. Like, it feels good in the moment, but then we feel worse because we see the amount of time that we've wasted on our phone scrolling when we could have been taking care of more and more important things. So for someone like this, the micro habit of stacking and implementation would be helpful. So Marcus commits to exactly 15 minutes of research, if and only if he has finished his first cup of coffee on Saturday morning. So when he finishes first cup of coffee on Saturday morning, he will then do 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes of research. The result for this is he bypasses the shame cycle of a wasted weekend. Small wins builds self-efficacy, the belief that he can exert change, which is a direct clinical antidepressant. Many people who are struggling with depression usually struggle with the idea of self-efficacy. They feel hopeless and helpless. They don't feel like they have the ability to change their life and to make changes around them. And when you have a lower self-efficacy, that will increase depression and hopelessness and helplessness, which then also creates or feeds the shame cycle. So when we doom scroll and we're wasting time doom scrolling and doing things that we know are not really going to be beneficial for us, that also feeds our shame cycle. So when you can put something into place that helps break that cycle, even if it's just a 15-minute start, that can slowly start showing you ways that you can change your life and have more control over your life, which then, of course, will help lessen the depression that you're struggling with. People often set outcome goals. They say, I want to save $10,000 or I want to lose 20 or 30 pounds. But the problem is, if you don't hit the goal fast enough, your brain sees it as a failure and then quits. We need to move to an identity-based discipline rather than goal-based discipline. So we're focusing more on identity over outcome. And this is one of the things that's important when it comes to being more disciplined, because when we're focused on outcome, we can get into more perfectionism. And if it doesn't look a certain way, we then want to quit. As I stated earlier, if you don't hit the goal fast enough, your brain sees it as failure and want to quit. But that doesn't mean that it's a failure just because you don't do it fast enough, or just because you have one day that goes badly, or one day that you was off or inconsistent. None of those are failures, but your brain's going to see it as failure because you put so much emphasis on the outcome rather than the identity. So what does it look like to have identity-based discipline? In psychology, we look at the self-perception theory, the idea that we develop our identity by observing our own behavior. So this aligns with what is read in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So discipline isn't just doing, it's becoming. Don't tell yourself you're trying to be disciplined. Tell yourself, I am the type of person who honors my commitments. When you see yourself as a steward of the time God gave you, the action follows the identity. The same thing as when you see yourself as a person who is a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ, the actions would then follow because you identify as a believer. So if you identify as a believer, then you're going to start to want to do the disciplines of what a believer does. And if you're not doing those things, then that's usually because you probably don't fully identify yourself as a believer, or there's other things that's probably challenging what it is or who it is that you identify with, because not everybody, when they come to the faith, have they completely let go of their old self. So their old self and the identity of their old self is probably still competing with who they are now and who they're trying to be in Christ. So that's why there's that confliction that starts to happen. And then even though you've said that you've assumed this identity in Christ, it's hard for you to follow with the discipline of it because you haven't been grounded in that identity yet. If I am grounded in being someone who loves education and I'm getting my academia, whatever it is that I'm studying, and that means that I am becoming someone who's an expert in whatever I'm studying in. That's who I am becoming. Because one of the things I notice is, like, if you identify and are someone who likes to learn, you're always going to learn. It doesn't matter if you go to college or not. I don't think college is the only way to learn. People who identify as someone who loves to be educated and that's just their identity, they like to learn new things, you would notice that they're always reading something, researching something, listening to something, taking a class here, taking a class there, because they like to educate themselves. And the reason why they can do this, discipline themselves in this way, is because of how they identify with themselves, not because of the outcome. Because if the outcome was that I'm going to only educate myself so I can get a certain job, if you don't get that job, then you're probably not going to continue educating yourself on that thing. And this is the difference between when we're focused on outcome and when we're focused on identity. If I see myself as that person, then I will be disciplined in order to become that person. If, however, my goal is just to lose a certain amount of weight and then I don't lose it fast enough, then I will quit. If someone's goal is to get muscular or six-pack, whatever it is, and they don't get in a certain amount of time, they quit. Because they don't see themselves as someone who goes to the gym. They don't see themselves as someone who cares about and loves fitness. They're more focused on the outcome. And then when the outcome don't come fast enough, they leave. But if you identify yourself as a fitness lover and love working out and taking care of your body, you won't be so focused. The outcome taking its time won't bother you. because I'm going to the gym because this is what I love to do, not only because of the results. The results will follow, of course, but I can be more patient with it now because I'm just doing what it is that I'm doing because this is who I am. So don't tell yourself you're trying to be disciplined. Tell yourself, I am the type of person who honors my commitments. When you see yourself as a steward of the time God gave you, the action follows the identity. In 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13, Peter says, therefore prepare your minds for action, discipline yourselves, set all your hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring you when he is revealed. Here in the book of 1 Peter, Peter is telling us to prepare our minds for action. And over the past few, I think it's about 6-8 weeks, I was doing a series on the armor of God, talking about pretty much putting on all your armor, the helmet of salvation, the belt of truth, getting your sword, your shield, your breastplate. And why would a soldier suit up and put on their armor? Because they have to prepare for action. They're preparing for a war. So in that same vein, Peter is telling us that we must have a mind that's prepared for action, prepared to fight, to do something. And we must discipline ourselves, set our hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring us when he is revealed. So this is talking about the discipline that we have in our faith. And this discipline comes with reading our word, fasting, praying, spending intimate time with the Lord, and doing everything that he commands us in his word. And when we discipline ourselves in this way, we are prepared. We are prepared to act and do the things that God calls us to do. We're prepared to act and defend ourselves and fight when the enemy is coming against us. We're prepared and disciplined to set our hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring when he is revealed. So when we also discipline and in the word, we are also prepared and waiting for the hope that comes from Jesus Christ. Because as believers, we're waiting for Jesus Christ to return. And the Bible tells us that we must be ready. We must be ready for his return and ready to take action. This is one way that the Bible also speaks to us about the importance of being disciplined. Discipline is also a fruit of the Spirit. In some translations, one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. Self-control is also a part of discipline, because in order to discipline yourself to do anything, you have to be able to control yourself. I have to be able to have self-control in order to stop myself from scrolling and doom scrolling all night. I need some level of self-control to wake up early in the morning and go to the gym. I need some level of self-control to be able to sit in front of my desk and do 5, 6, 8 hours of work that I need to take care of and not procrastinate. All of that falls under self-control. Many times when we think of self-control, especially when the Bible is speaking, we only think about avoiding sin, but we also need self-control when it comes to doing and completing things that we need to do, because God's going to also call you to do certain things that you need to be able to have some level of self-control in order to implement and to have that discipline to get those things done. One of the things I often encourage many people to do is to journal. I love to journal, and I always encourage people to journal because it's the best way to understand what's going on with your thoughts, with your emotions, and then being able to make better decisions and behaviors that can give you better thoughts and give you better emotions and help you with your mental turmoil. I created this journal for you for free so that you can start understanding how to go and dig into your thoughts and into your emotion. In this journal, you'll be able to reflect to understand what's triggering you, what's going on in your mind, having questions to help you to really write it down and go through your self-talk and understanding the patterns that's going on in your life. And here I also provide, it has an emotions chart to help you with writing down your emotions, because not all the time it's easy to put words to our emotions. The more words you can put to it, the more you can understand your emotions, and being able to write down how it's affecting your behavior and take action. So click the link below to get the journal, and I hope that it truly does help you when it comes to starting to understand what's going on in your heart, your mind, and in your soul, so that you can start seeing transformation, start renewing your mind, and living a healthier and better life. Now back to the show. As a therapist, I can tell you that willpower is a finite resource. It's not something that's always going to help you and help you in the long run. It's like a phone battery. It drains by 4 p.m. And if you rely on willpower to be disciplined, you will eventually fail, because that's how willpower is. It will eventually fail, because we all know that there are certain times of the day where sometimes you can have as much willpower as you want. It might not work out for you. And that's one of the reasons why it's good to us also to know ourselves. Some people, we know that morning time is better for us. So then if it's the morning time is better for you in certain things, then do things in the morning time. Like, for example, I get a lot of good work done more in the morning time, which is one of the reasons why I usually try to get work done in the morning. I work out in the morning time because I know if I don't do my workout in the morning, most likely the rest of the day is going to take over with work and seeing clients and everything that I'm just not going to be able to fit a workout in. So I have to discipline myself and have that self-control to make sure I do it in the morning, because the morning are the best time for me. And if you want to pray in the morning, because praying, I will say also, that's another thing that I do first thing in the morning, because praying first thing in the morning has been the best practice for me so that I don't forget. And I think it's a best way to start my day. Starting my day in prayer is one of the best things that I feel like I always do, because it does help It helped the rest of my day and set the tone for the rest of my day when I start in prayer. So one of the strategies is to do a friction audit. So you decrease the friction for the good. So if you want to pray in the morning, what might help is you put your Bible on your coffee maker. So let's say you're one of the people who the first thing you do is get coffee. Then put your Bible nearby and just leave it there so that when you go get your coffee, you see your Bible, and then that would ignite your brain to go read your word. Because oftentimes when it comes to building new habits, what's usually encouraged is that you put a new habit that you're trying to create next to something that you already do. If you always already have the habit of drinking coffee, put the Bible next to the coffee maker. Or if you're trying to eat healthy, put that apple and your fruits next to the coffee maker so that you're more likely to try to grab a fruit instead of something else that's unhealthy in the morning when you're drinking your coffee. So you want to pair something that you already do habitually with a new habit so that way it becomes associated with each other and it becomes easier for you to then follow through. So while you're decreasing the friction to do good things, so you're decreasing the friction because now that the Bible's right next to the coffee maker, it makes it much faster and easier. When you have your clothes already laid out, easy to grab in the morning to go to the gym, you're decreasing the friction that's going to come between you doing something that you want to do, something that's good. And then you want to increase the friction for doing the bad things. So social media is draining your mental health. Move the app off your home screen or delete it for the weekend. That causes more friction. Now, some people say, well, I'll just download it anyway, but that causes some friction. It causes another extra step that sometimes it might deter you. If you put your phone in the other room and you're here focusing, you might not want to get up. There's less of a friction for it to then get in your way or interrupt you in whatever it is that you're doing. This is very similar to what we read in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 26. It says, ponder the path of your feet and let all your ways be established. It means we don't just hope to walk the right path. We have to engineer the right path. The book of Proverbs is telling us to ponder the path of your feet. So think about the path of your feet. Think about what it is that you're doing. Think about where it is that you're going and let all your ways be established. We have to establish it. We have to have a foundation. And this reminds me also in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5-6 that said, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge the Lord, and he shall direct your path. So when you're acknowledging the Lord and he's directing your path, he will give you that establishment to then know where your feet should go and what it is that you should do. So we're not just hoping to do the right things. We have to engineer the path. And this is one of the reasons that I don't agree with the Christianity that just thinks that I just have to always wait and God is just going to do things. Yes, there is a part that God does and we wait for God, but usually there are certain things that we need to do as well, whether it's reflecting, making sure we're on the right path, doing certain things that God calls us to do. There is always something for us to do rather than sit and wait. Most of the time we have to continue growing in our disciplines every single day. Those things never actually stop, even when we're waiting on the Lord. Whatever you've been doing has to keep happening. You have to keep reading your word. You have to keep praying. Whenever you are waiting on the Lord, those disciplines don't stop. And discipline is simply pre-deciding your obedience so you don't have to choose when you're tired. Let me say that again. Discipline is simply pre-deciding your obedience so you don't have to choose when you're tired. Because we all know that when we're tired, we usually make bad choices. When we're tired, we also might just go back to our habits. When we're tired, it is usually not the best time to try to do anything new. But when you have discipline, you've already decided that obedience already, because you already have that discipline and you already have that habit that when you're tired, when you're drained, you're going to do whatever it is that you've already been disciplined to do. Even if it falters a little bit. There are times where I'm very tired. I might falter my workouts a little bit, but it's never to a complete regression where I'm just not working out ever again. With many things that I do that I have a discipline in, it's never a complete full regression because I've already pre-decided my obedience to do these things and to do these things always. So I'm always going to get right back on track. Even if I have a day that, let's say I didn't pray as long as I wanted to, it was much shorter than that day. Maybe it was only 15 minutes rather than 45. It's not going to completely stop me from the next day then getting back up to do my discipline. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, it does affect. But however, it doesn't stop you because you've already decided that this is who you're going to be every single day. And then once you get into a habit for a few months, especially years, it becomes easier because once again, that goes back to your identity. This is your identity now. This is who you are now. So it's just something that you just do. You don't have to think so hard about it anymore. Discipline is also very good for our mental health. There is a huge link between discipline and mental wellness. Discipline moves you from life is happening to me to I am a co-creator with God in my life. So it moves you from a victim mentality to a victor mentality, and knowing that you have the self-efficacy to be more victorious and as you co-create with God in your life. This then kills the helplessness that feeds depression. Oftentimes people with depression feels helpless and as though they cannot do what it is that they need to do to get better. And there have been many research that has shown that people many times learn helplessness. And anything that you learn, you can unlearn and learn something new in replacement of it. So you can learn how to have more hope. You can learn to have more self-efficacy and know that you can do these things and be a co-creator because of the discipline that you have in your life. And this is one of the ways that discipline can help pull you out of depression, because once you start getting into the habit, and some of this kind of falls into what's called behavioral activation when it comes to depression, when you start trying to do things regardless of how you feel. So slowly but surely you try to implement small tasks, whether it's I'm going to start with 10 minutes on my treadmill, 10 minutes with my weights. I'm going to do 10 minutes of push-ups, 10 minutes of whatever that's easy for you to do, because you want to have low friction. So if just doing 10 push-ups in your home is the fastest or the easiest thing that you can do right now, you start with that. Then you can also focus on things that you find valuable. Many times when it comes to depression, people get something called anhedonia, which is when you when you have a lack of interest in anything and everything, even things that you once enjoyed. So usually I would encourage clients to just do it anyway, especially if it's something that you value. So let's say you're a creative person and creating art is something that you value. Let's say reading is something that you value, but you haven't been feeling much interest in it. Still do it. Do it for 10 to 15 minutes because you're trying to train your brain to do things even if you don't feel like it. And this behavioral activation then starts to affect your thoughts and then your emotions. The same thing that goes back with many techniques when it comes to cognitive behavioral therapy. Most of the time we start with a thought and then try to get it to affect, which would then change the emotion and then change your behavior. But sometimes you can start with the behavior, even if the thoughts and the emotion hasn't changed, because the behavior and the experience you're having with the behavior will give you new experiences, which will then give you new emotions, then give you new thoughts. So when it comes to that loop, the thought, emotion, behavior, we could usually try to attack it at either end, with the thought and affirmations and trying to challenge your self-talk, or the behavior piece. Now, both have to go work in hand, but sometimes the starting point might be different things depending on you and what works better for you. Another thing we want to do is reduce decision fatigue. When you automate your life through discipline, which means you're habitually going to the gym, meal prepping, setting work hours, you save your mental energy for the things that matter, like being present with your spouse or your children or whoever in your family. You want to lessen the amount of decisions that you have to make. And that's one of the things that discipline does as well. You no longer have to, I don't wake up in the morning deciding, am I going to work out? Am I going to pray? I already know I'm going to do that. So then it lessens the mental energy that my mind has to take on making decisions. And as many of you maybe know, sometimes people have decision fatigue. They get tired of having to make so many decisions all the time, every day. But when you become disciplined in certain things, you're not having to make those decisions anymore because those decisions were already made, which then makes it easier for you not to then fall into decision fatigue, which then makes it easier for you to then have the mental energy to focus on other things. Discipline is also the antidote to anxiety. Anxiety is often the dread of the undone and what hasn't been taken care of. When we are disciplined, we close the loop that keeps our brains running in circles at 2 o'clock in the morning, thinking about all the things that we need to get done. This also goes back to what I mentioned about doing a brain dump before bed of all the things that you're worried about and dealing with all the things that you're worried about. Having like a worry jar also could be helpful. All the worries in a jar, and every day you pick one thing that you're going to take care of in that jar. Sometimes you might pick something in that jar and realize, oh, this is something I can't control. So we want to tear that one up, throw it away, and just focus on the things you can control. Now, why do I say that discipline is an act of self-love? Because discipline gives your mind and body a higher level of self-care. Disciplined people know when to stop, go, when to say yes, when to say no, when to give, when to rest, what to do, when to do it. And they also have self-control and care for their goals, their values, and reminds their brain what really matters. This also includes setting boundaries. And all these things teaches your brain what matters. So self-control and discipline is an act of self-love. Because if you think about it as well, when people are selfish, they have no control. That's not an act of self-love. Some people might think that people who are greedy, people who are addicted to things love themselves too much, but they don't actually love themselves, because usually the thing that you're addicted to is harmful to you. And even if it's not necessarily a harmful thing, so let's say, for example, shopping in general is not harmful, but if you're addicted to it, it can become harmful when it's affecting you financially. So eventually addictions are always going to be something that affects us in a bad way. And this is one of the reasons why I say that addiction And when people are doing these things for themselves, it's actually not an act of self-love, because in the long run, it's actually detrimental and harming you. But when you have discipline, you know how to control yourself in these ways. And that is an act of self-love, because you're giving yourself exactly what is it that you need and how much you need. You're not going too far. You're not also doing too little. You know when to give, you know when to stop. You know how to take care of yourself when you need to take solitude, I would say. Isolating is bad. Solitude is good. You know when you need to retreat and take time for yourself, because solitude and isolation, I would say, are two different things. Sometimes people think that they're isolating too much. Now, if you're away and isolating from people for weeks, then yeah, that's probably isolation, not solitude. Well, I would say the main difference between solitude and isolation is solitude is more intentional. If I'm taking time away from others in solitude, it's because I know I need to re-energize myself. I'm probably focusing on what I need for my self-care, praying, reading the word, and filling in myself, and then going out back into the world when I'm ready. Isolation, usually no one's doing that. People who are depressed tend to isolate, and they're not usually working on themselves, reflecting on themselves, or doing anything to better themselves. If you're sleeping in bed all day, you're not doing anything to benefit yourself. And most likely you're falling into isolation, because we do need to be connected and talk to people. People who have solitude, they're intentional about it, and then they go out and know that they're ready to be around people and be in the world. When you isolate, the longer you stay in isolation, you just continue to stay in isolation. And the more you don't want to be around people and you want to keep avoiding people, because the isolation starts to pull you away and keep you in that darkness. For my brothers and sisters in Christ out there listening, remember that discipline is a fruit of the Spirit. One of the characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. It's not a self-help achievement. It's a Spirit-led partnership. So when we think about self-control, one of the other ways we can have self-control is by the 5-second rule that sometimes some professionals use. When you feel that nudge to do the hard thing, to send that email, to apologize to your spouse, to get out of bed, count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then move. Count to 5. Don't give your brain time to talk you out of it and to talk you out of your calling. Just move. Sometimes I would do this often in the morning. If I have a hard time getting up out of bed, I would just stop and go, get up. And I'll just allow myself to get up. Sometimes I'll count, sometimes I won't, but you just count to 5 and say move. So that way you are no longer ruminating and trying to overanalyze it. You're just getting yourself up to go and do what it is that you want to do and trying to tell yourself to do before you could talk yourself out of it. So the same way we could talk ourselves out of things, we can also talk ourselves into things. You could talk yourself into doing the things that you need to do to get up and to take care of these things. And the last scripture I'll share is 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, that said, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." That sound mind in the original Greek is sophronismos, which literally means and translates to self-discipline or self-control and moderation. So the Lord does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control, a sound mind, self-discipline. And because we are going to need this discipline, especially whatever it is that we are doing. Because when Paul was telling Timothy to not fear, it was because Timothy was teaching and preaching. There was something he had to do. And Paul was telling him to not walk in fear, but have power, love, and a sound mind, that he needs to walk in discipline and self-control, in power and in love, and that he can do the things that God calls him to do. If you've been feeling chaotic, don't try to change your whole life tomorrow. Just pick one identity goal and ask yourself, what would a disciplined steward do today? For our listeners today, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on and ask yourself, where is the friction in your life right now? Is your environment working against you and your calling? Ask yourself this question, just start with one thing. What is the one thing you want to discipline yourself in? If you want to be someone who goes to the gym, just ask yourself, how do I identify with this person and what do this type of person do? The type of person who go to the gym, what are the things that they do? If you want to be a content creator, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be someone who reads 10 books a month, ask yourself the question, what does it look like to be that person? What does that person do? Someone who's reading 10 books a month, usually they're probably people who are not watching that much TV. So there might be a different way that you steward your time because you want to be that person. So I leave those questions for you and also check to see what frictions in your life, what's getting in your way of you being able to do what it is that you need to do. Some of us, our environment is also working against us. Sometimes some of us, we need to learn how to clean and fix our area before we do a certain task. What does it look like to be a cleaning person, an organized person? What are the steps that I need to take to not only become that person, but be able to maintain it? I leave this reflection question for you. So just think about one thing that you want to change today and one new habit that you compare with an old habit, one way to lessen the friction of the good stuff, and one way where you can increase the friction of the bad stuff. And so that way you can start implementing the things you've been trying to implement, and you can start walking in more self-discipline. And lastly, I will leave you with these few tips. These are certain things that I know that people do that's helpful. Sometimes people use Post-its and post what it is that they need to do around. Some people write down their list of things to do either with a pen and paper or on their phone, and having a list can be also helpful. Having a calendar block could be helpful. So actually blocking out your calendar to show you what you need to take care of at certain times so that you can follow that. Some people have a whiteboard that they might write what it is that they need to do and make sure that whiteboard is right in front of them. So it's always reminding them of the tasks that they need to take care of at hand. There's a lot of different techniques out there. There's also the Pomodoro technique. That's where you work for 25 minutes, take a break for 5, work for 25 minutes, then you take a break for, I think, 10 minutes, then you work another 25 minutes. So with the Pomodoro method, you are constantly also implementing rest, because sometimes resting in between can also help with making the tasks you need to be small, bite size. So when you tell yourself, I'm just going to work for 25 minutes, it can sound a lot easier and less overwhelming than if you're telling yourself, I need to do something for 3 hours. So there's many different methods out there. Find what it is that works for you. But first ask yourself, what friction's in my way and who do I want to be? Change your discipline from being focused on outcome to being focused on your identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And reverse engineer that to say, what are the behaviors and habits of this person that I say that I am? And then start implementing those things little by little, one by one. Thank you for watching this episode. And if you made it all the way to the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that it will be helpful for you. I hope that you'll be able to find something that you can start to implement, and that you will start seeing yourself differently, start seeing discipline differently, and start seeing your identity differently. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are there some techniques that I mentioned that you will start trying out that you think could be helpful for you? Are there some techniques that you already do that has helped you stay disciplined and focused? I would love to hear what helped you stay focused and disciplined, and maybe it can help some of our other viewers. Let me know what you think in the comment. I do read and respond to every single comment, and I hope you all are able to stay disciplined, stay grounded, and remember, your mental health is worth the effort of well-ordered living. Like, subscribe, share, and until next time, take care.